आणि आता थेट जाणार आहोत एनडीटीव्ही वर्ल्ड समिटमध्ये. तिथे परराष्ट्र मंत्री एस जयशंकर आलेले आहेत. थेट जाऊया.
Summit 2024, the theme is the India Century. You heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi this morning how he describes the India Century. Now we should understand and break it down how the whole thing will actually unfold looking at the global uncertainties. Here Dr. Jaishankar is the best person to talk today, and just now a big news has broken. We will talk about it later. Thank you, External Affairs Minister Shri Jaishankar ji, for sparing time for us. Let's start with equations, how it works globally. We all know that current global order is being challenged majorly by various forces. How do we see ourselves, our West, which itself is now in a very difficult situation vis-a-vis India?
First of all, let me say what a great pleasure it is to be with you and with at this NDTV platform. So, let's look at your theme first, India Century. If one were to predict ahead, and there are people who have done this, I think I saw some time ago a Goldman Sachs study which said that by 2075, I think it said we'd be 52.5 trillion economy, we'd be the second largest probably at that point of world. But I think a much nearer short-term prediction is that by 2030 we would probably be the third largest economy. So that's one way of measuring it. But I think there are other ways which may be more effective. If you look today at the big debates of technology debate, AI debate, semiconductor debate, I think the importance of Indian talent and skill is growing really almost day by day. In fact, when I go, especially when I go to Europe, to some extent to North America as well, there's a lot of interest really in how can we get this smooth movement of talent and skills out of India, because the fact is that within certain demographics, we are actually disproportionately large. I would also say if we look beyond numbers, beyond growth rates, beyond markets, supply chains, there's also one very I would say intangible quality, and that is leadership and attitude. That who will step forward? That if you have today a war going on in Ukraine, who is prepared to step forward? If you have a natural disaster in the Indian Ocean, who is prepared to step forward? So sometimes there may be countries who have capabilities, but they don't have the desire or the appetite or the mindset to do that anymore. So I think if you add all of this, you are somewhere in that zone which you are looking at.
Since US and Canada are main players in the western part of the world, US we will deal a little later, but what about Canada's situation? How are we dealing with it? Now, have we contained it?
Just imagine, some time ago you would have said, Canada we will deal with later, let's talk about the US. So now, for some inexplicable reason, you are saying US baad mein baat karenge, chalo Canada ki baat karte.
US is not problematic for us.
No, that's true, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
US is not problematic for us.
But Canada is, even though it's a lightweight.
Unfortunately, I agree there also.
But such a wonderful people-to-people relationship, and now it is a struggling economy and whatever. But why Trudeau will be doing this?
I think that's a question you need to have Trudeau here, not Jaishankar, to answer. I can only speculate. Look, to some extent, I think there is a general Western issue, and to some extent a very specific Canada issue. I think the Western issue has been, after all, let's be frank, the world order after 1945 was heavily Western. I mean, it was before 45 also in an imperial colonial sense. And after 1990s, it was again very, very Western. So what has happened, you can say, in the last 20, 25 years is that there is what you can call a rebalancing, a multipolarity. Many non-Western countries have a bigger share, a bigger contribution, a bigger role, if you would, and a bigger influence which will naturally come. So the equations, in a way, between the West and the non-West, I think is changing. And it's not easy to adjust to that. If you've been dominant and you are less dominant, if there was a time when, in the conversation you were looking up and I was looking down, and now the conversation is no longer like that. It takes a little bit of getting used to. So I would say, in a broad way, on multiple subjects, today when the natural diversity of the world has started to express itself, when many more countries, and particularly many more large countries like India or China, have points of view and positions to take, there will be contestations, there will be frictions, there will be arguments. So it won't be so smooth. That's a larger picture. Where Canada is concerned, I think there are some very specific issues. I think a lot of people know that. You are right. If you look at the people to people, if you look at the business relationship, it's very, very strong. And for a lot of people, it is very difficult to imagine that we could reach the state of relations that we have today. So why has this happened? I would say definitely there is some history. For the non-Indians in the room, I should remind you that in the 1980s, Indian Air India plane was blown up flying out of Canada, and in many ways that's a kind of a overhang, because it wasn't just an incident, it was a reflection of something which was going on there. But at a time when many people felt that, look, that's all behind us, I think developments in the politics went in a different direction, and we are seeing to some degree the consequences of that. So again, I give you the first observation that, the broad attitude versus the specific. And I'll give you 2-3 examples of it. Canada has just, they asked us to subject our High Commissioner to a police inquiry, you can say, and we chose to withdraw the High Commissioner and diplomats. Now, look at it. They seem to have a problem if Indian diplomats are even trying to make efforts to find out what is happening in Canada on matters which directly pertain to their welfare and security. But look what happens in India. Canadian diplomats have no problem going around collecting information on our military, on our police, profiling people, targeting people to be stopped in Canada. So apparently the license that they give themselves is totally different from the kind of restrictions that they impose on diplomats in Canada. Or even take the press. I'm at a press event. Now, when we tell them, saying, look, you have people openly threatening leaders of India, diplomats of India, sometimes the threat is not just verbal, it's physical. So their answer is freedom of speech. Okay? Now, when Indian journalists make social media comments, if you threaten the Indian High Commissioner, he is supposed to accept it as freedom of speech. But if an Indian journalist says the Canadian High Commissioner walked out of South Block looking very grumpy, it is apparently foreign interference. Now, how, look at the, this is not even, double standards is a very mild word for it. So, look, there is this thing that we will do it differently at home, we will do it differently abroad, we will do it our way, but that doesn't apply to you. So I think these are the larger, I would say, adjustments which have to happen in this changing world.
वेस्ट को थोड़ा सा ये समझने की ज़रूरत है कि क्या चेंज हुआ है. अगर वो एक्नॉलेजमेंट नहीं आएगा तो वो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व नहीं होगी. तो जो अमेरिका या वेस्ट लेड ग्लोबल ऑर्डर चल रहा था, नाउ इट इज़ कोलैप्सिंग. देयर इज़ अ मेजर चैलेंज टू दैट
मैं उतना तो नहीं कहूँगा कि इट इज़ कोलैप्सिंग, बट
challenges are there. Look at the biggest or best democracy and institutions in America are in difficult situation. Let's not go into that. But the question is, अगर अमेरिका ये रियलाइज नहीं करेगा कि इंडिया या वो देश जो बहुत कल्चरल कॉन्फिडेंस के साथ आते हैं, उनको इक्वल पार्टनर के रूप में और कहीं कहीं उनको प्राइमेसी देते हुए वो दुनिया में अपना कोई रोल प्ले करने की कोशिश करे और सोचे कि नहीं अभी भी दुनिया हम चला रहे हैं, तो ये एक बहुत बड़ी गलती होगी, लेट होगा और दुनिया उतना अच्छा नहीं बन पाएगी जितना अच्छा हम बनाना चाहते हैं.
नहीं, देखिए ऐसा है, मैं पूरे वेस्ट की मैं बात तो करूँगा क्योंकि सिविलाइजेशनली आप कह सकते हैं, कल्चरली वो जुड़े हुए हैं, बट मैं ये नहीं कहूँगा कि ऑल ऑफ देम आर ऑन द सेम पेज या सब लोगों को वो समझ नहीं है. इनफैक्ट आपने अमेरिका का जिक्र किया, मैं तो उल्टा कहूँगा कि अमेरिका में वो समझ है. इसीलिए अगर आप ये क्वाड जो 2017 में जो बनी थी क्वाड, आप ये क्वाड देखिए, तब तक अमेरिका कहता था कि अगर आप ट्रीटी अलाइन नहीं हैं तो मैं आपके साथ बियॉन्ड अ पॉइंट आई एम नॉट प्रिपेयर टू वर्क विथ यू, उसकी लिमिटेशंस होंगी. नाउ देव इवॉल्व्ड, दे हैव चेंज. टुडे आप पिछले 7 साल में देखेंगे हाउ मच क्वाड हैज़ एक्चुअली ग्रोन. सो आई वुड से दिस, when I go to Europe, when I go to definitely US, North America, there are countries which have understood this. There are countries today who say there is a value to working with India. There are countries who say, okay, this is our interest, this is India's interest, let us find a meeting point. Now, the unfortunate thing is that didn't get through in Canada, or maybe the political compulsions overtook that. I mean, as I said, I can only speculate on the reason. So I would not say, पूरे वेस्ट को समझ नहीं है कि जो उनकी ऑर्डर जो है वो चल नहीं पाएगी हमारे बिना. You see, we will all come to understandings. We will, world is a very practical place. तो वो समझते हैं, बहुत लोग एडजस्ट भी करते हैं, कोई कम करते हैं, कोई ज़्यादा करते हैं, कोई कुछ सब्जेक्ट में करते हैं, दूसरे में नहीं करते. So all of that will happen. But it is just in this spectrum, मैं कहूँगा Canada is way behind.
Right. अब चलते हैं चाइना की तरफ, जहां आज एक बड़ा डेवलपमेंट हुआ है. फॉरेन सेक्रेटरी ने ब्रिक्स मीटिंग के ठीक पहले ही हैज़ अनाउंस्ड दैट सम एग्रीमेंट हैज़ बीन रीच्ड फॉर डिसएंगेजमेंट एंड पेट्रोलिंग. So I'll be very keen to know some details how it will work.
Well, I think what Foreign Secretary has said is what I can also say, that for those who have not heard that we reached an agreement on patrolling, and with that the disengagement, we have gone back to where the situation was in 2020. And we can say with that the disengagement process with China, you can say has been completed. So far, I would say that's as much as I can share with you. I'm sure in due course, इसके details वगैरह निकलेंगे.
So, will now India be able to patrol in the areas of Galwan, Depsang?
No, you see, there are areas which, for various reasons, after 2020, because they had blocked us, so we had blocked them. So दो तरफा था, Bob. So what has happened is we have reached an understanding which will allow the patrolling. For example, you spoke about Depsang. That's not the only place. There are other places also. So I think the understanding, to my knowledge, is that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020.
Right. So what does this disengagement will finally mean, and how do we now see India-China relation going forward?
I think it's a good development. It's a positive development, and I would say it's a product of very patient and very persevering diplomacy. That at various points of time, people almost gave up. You can say, this has happened. So we have always maintained that, on the one hand, we had to obviously do the counter deployments, but side by side, we have been negotiating. We've been negotiating in fact, since September of 2020, when I met my counterpart, Mr. Wangi, in Moscow at that time. So it has been a very patient process, maybe more complicated than it could and should have been, but whatever it is, the fact is, if we are able, as we now have, to reach an understanding regarding patrolling, regarding maintaining the observing the sanctity of the LAC, then I think what it does is it creates a basis that the peace and tranquility, which there should be in the border areas, which there was before 2020, hopefully we will be able to come back to that peace and tranquility. And that was our major concern, because we always said that if you disturb the peace and tranquility, how do you expect the rest of the relationship to go forward? So we'll have to see. I mean, abhi jo understanding jo thi, it was reached only today. So I think we have to see what the consequential.
Yeah, so we think it is a very important development. So will it be right to speculate that it will have a positive impact on trade and investment?
No, look, I would say right now it's your right to speculate. It is my caution as a minister to be careful in responding. So it has just happened, There will be now meetings to see what should be the next steps.
Okay.
So I wouldn't go so fast.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
So let's look at the big picture again when we talk about India's century. So how do you see India-China engagement and relationship going forward? Because if India's century has to be defined as really India's century, this whole balancing game between America and China becomes very important. How India is going to play that game?
I would take your question in a way in three parts. India-China, India-America, and India vis-a-vis China-America. India-China, in a way, if you look at it, we are the only two countries with more than 1 billion people. We have a certain civilizational history, and all of that people know. And today we are on a track of, I would say, economic recovery or rejuvenation. And there is no question anybody who's predicting, if you are predicting developments of this century, definitely you cannot leave India and China out of that equation. We are very, very prominent, very key almost in a way, I would say. But here is the challenge for us, which is that we are neighbors. We have unresolved boundary issue. there are, they have been rising. We have also been rising. So if two neighboring countries, two large neighboring countries rise next to each other in the same time frame, it's not easy. There are very, very few historical parallels for that. So managing this double rise, you can say, that too in proximity. If one was in some other part of the world, it's a different issue. I think these will require a lot of skill and a lot of deftness and diplomacy. And the truth is, our capabilities will change, our influence will change, our ambitions will change. Both of us will naturally want to be bigger and more visible and more effective in the world. So how do we get an equilibrium in our relationship? I think this is one of the big issues for us and for them. On India and America, I would say, starting with President Clinton's visit in 2000, we broke out of that American mindset of India-Pakistan hyphenation. And since then, from Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, actually you will see India-US has grown steadily all this time. I would particularly, as someone, I've been dealing with this relationship for more than 40 years. I would particularly say last 10 years, and I'm not saying it because I'm politically part of the government now, but the last 10 years, see, a lot of the ideological hang-ups that we had vis-a-vis US, we were able to put that behind and forge ahead much more confidently. Because a lot of the constraints were also self-imposed on our side. So I do think today that there is a very, very strong convergence between India and US. It is strategic, it is political, it is very deeply technology driven. When I look at the future of technology and what it means for global balances of power, I think it's certainly an area, a domain which will be very important. If you look at the people-to-people relationship, the size of the community out there, that has changed. So I'm very confident that relationship will do very well. It won't be automatic. I mean, बीच में कुछ problems हो सकती, but I'm confident we will always be able to deal with those issues. Now you have US, China. Clearly there's a very sharp rivalry between them today. So these are calculations that they have made about each other. I think where we are concerned, we have to make calculations from our interest point of view. That we have to look at the world situation and say, okay, what are the decisions, what are the choices, or what are the issues on which, taking this step will help me in what manner. And I think that's really what we would like to do. That at the end of the day, if we are looking at a foreign policy which has a very sharp sense of what is our national interest, but also a sense of what is global interest, I would definitely say we would make those calculations and take those decisions and create, the right partnerships which will serve our interests.
Right. अभी दूसरा जो सेंचुरी में ये देखना होगा कि रशिया के साथ कैसे हम इंगेज हो रहे हैं और क्या होने वाला है दोनों के बीच. उसके पहले चूंकि आपने टेक्नोलॉजी का जिक्र किया, तो एक सवाल मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ आपसे. बहुत लोग इस सवाल को बहुत सिनिकल सवाल कह सकते हैं, लेकिन गवर्नमेंट के पास जो टेक्नोलॉजी, कंपनीज के पास डिफेंस स्ट्रेटजी, this will work out well, no problem. Pharma, etc., it will work out all well. But when it comes to big tech, AI, that kind of technology, even American political establishment is now not in a position to contain what is happening globally. I find it very complex task where India, despite having great public digital infrastructure, when it comes to the big tech, the entire world is now suffering in many ways, in many layers. I see this as a big monster. I don't know, what are your thoughts on this? Containing this is very important, and India can play a great role. That's why I'm asking this question.
See, we have actually demonstrated in this decade what can be the benefits of digital public infrastructure. And it's actually been revolutionary in this country. That very, very small things, shuru hua passport se, driving license se. Today, look how much faster your income tax is. Look at, any kind of entitlement. And it's interesting, Initially you would say, yeah, IT, digital, these are for rich people will benefit more. But actually it is the common citizen. It is the most vulnerable, the lowest income person who's gaining the most actually from digital progress. That today, if you have a payment of say Kisan Samman Nidhi for the seeds and fertilizer, usko bina cut ke, bina rishwat dete, he manages to get it into their account. Okay? So their health today, Ayushman Bharat, the housing, Awas, even the food entitlements. So what has happened is we ourselves don't fully realize, because I would say all of us sitting in this room, we do not avail of all the benefits and the programs which actually the government today extends. Because I'm in the political world and I go out there and I see this for myself, I can tell you there's a sea change out there. And even last 5-6 years you can see the change. So we have done exceedingly well in this respect. And I think we'll keep growing. And I actually, in a way, I'm seeing, when I speak to counterparts in Europe or even in US, take something like election, look how smoothly our election moves. And look at the digital preparation. Ki sabko pata hai, your voting, your entitlements, your counting, the whole system. Now, at that delivery, service, governance level, we've done phenomenally well. At the same time, have we produced those large corporates, what you call big tech? No, I would say most of the large big tech corporates are largely American and perhaps to some degree now Chinese. So America, I think, clearly dominates that field. We'll have to see in the, we are now moving to an era of artificial intelligence. Look, the tech world has a relatively short shelf life. They have to keep reinventing themselves. I'm sure somebody having a conversation 5 years from now, sitting here, would have a very, very different landscape that they would be looking at. But I definitely see these as opportunities, and they come as a package. Again, I give you an example. You should, it's really worth looking at today how many global capability centers have come up in India.
Yeah.
And how much work they're actually generating. That I think their share of exports, I read a report and which was quite dated. I think at that time was 120 or 130 billion dollars. Now that's one example. Look at semiconductors. Again, we missed the bus. We had one establishment in Chandigarh which was 40 years old, and we actually had done virtually nothing in the semiconductor field. Till last year, we started the semiconductor mission and started pushing. Now, you can't be the 5th largest economy or at the end of the decade, 3rd largest economy and say something as important as chips. I have no contribution, I have no production, I have no companies in this field. You can't do that. You will simply end up then as a user of other people's products, technologies with all the vulnerabilities that come. So I think you have today government which is thinking ahead, which is plan. As you grow, your planning, your strategizing has to grow along with that. So if you look today at semiconductor technology, or you look today at railway technology, you look today at the fact that we are trying to make an airplane in this country. We have made a fighter, we are now making a transport aircraft. So a country like us, if this is your century, there must be a manufacturing backbone to it. There must be a technology emanating from it. All this comes as part of its being your century. You cannot do an India century based on service. You cannot end up as a good market for other people's products. That cannot be our fate.
Sir, you have some time constraints, so we have to wrap up and take some questions before we let you go. But I wanted to talk about Russia and then the neighborhood, because neighborhood situation is a sort of mixed bag. So let's first deal with Russia, how India-Russia relationship is going to evolve in this century.
By the way, we're going to Russia. Prime Minister is going to Russia tomorrow. So timely question, thank you. Look, I put it to you very simply. If you look at our history with Russia after independence, I can say, and with fear of contradiction from anybody in this room, that Russia has never done anything to impact our interests negatively. Okay? It's a big statement to make, because there are, among the major countries, there are not many countries about whom you can say this. Now, today, Russia's situation is different. I think Russia's relationship with the West has obviously broken down. So you have a Russia which is turning much more towards Asia. So we have to ask ourselves, if Russia is looking more at Asia, should Russia not have multiple options in Asia? Should we, as an Asian country, not take, what is good for us in national interest? And clearly, Russia, as a major natural resources power, has a complementarity with India at this stage of development when we are big resource consumers. So, people talk about Russian oil, but it isn't just Russian oil. It could be oil, it could be fertilizers, it could be metals, it could be coal. So there is a whole economic logic to it. There is also a basic strategic logic that if you look at the Eurasian landmass, there are 3 big countries. It's like 101 in international relations. You always keep you always keep a balance. You will always keep a relationship with the further away country in very, very good state. So there is a logic, strategic logic, there is an economic fit, and I think the relationship, the history is a positive asset in that relationship, and that's how I see it.
और नेबरहुड के बारे में थोड़ा बताइए, एक एक देश को अगर आप स्पेसिफिक बताना चाहें. मालदीव्स के प्रेसिडेंट अभी आके गए, लेकिन बांग्लादेश के साथ एक नई सिचुएशन है. श्रीलंका में पॉलिटिकल चेंज है. भूटान के हमारे दोस्त यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं. तो नेबरहुड को आप कैसे डील करते हुए देखते हैं आने वाले दिनों में?
देखिए, नेबरहुड में हमें ये भी मानना चाहिए कि आज जो है हमारा नेबरहुड ज़्यादातर डेमोक्रेटिक है, जिसका मतलब है कि वहाँ पॉलिटिकल चेंजेस होती रहेंगी, जो पहले की सिचुएशन नहीं थी. तो आज जो है वी हैव टू बिल्ड अ स्ट्रैटेजी विच सेज ओके देयर कुड बी चेंजेस ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ द हिस्ट्री, बिकॉज ऑफ आवर साइज, बिकॉज ऑल्सो मेनी कॉमन थिंग्स वी हैव, we will often be the subject of their politics, even if you don't want to be. Okay? So we have to accept that and factor it into our policy. So there will be ups and downs. So 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when Prime Minister Modi came to office, in fact, one of the early discussions we had was how do we prepare for a neighborhood where there will be changes, where there will be controversies. And the answer is, if we can create a record, not just an image, a record of being the country which is a reliable friend, that, you know, कोई भी संकट आए, भूकंप आए नेपाल में, मालदीव्स में वाटर क्राइसिस था, श्रीलंका में मडस्लाइड था, या कोविड के समय में people, you know, needed vaccine, or during when the Ukraine war started, there was a fertilizer problem. So at times of trouble, if the neighborhood understands, okay, there is this country, India, it's a generous country, it's a large country, it is willing to step out, it will not get into, you know, I will do what you are doing for me, not that kind of reciprocity. I think if we create that kind of record, which I believe we have. I mean, and to me, the sharpest example is Sri Lanka. I mean, when Sri Lanka got into trouble, within a matter of weeks, we stepped forward, and we stepped forward without subjecting Sri Lanka to, I would say, political, economic, and other conditionalities. So today, in Sri Lanka, we have seen a very, very big political change in Sri Lanka. Okay, a party which has never formed a government on its own is today in power. But when I went and met the president of the party and the foreign minister of the party, for them, they actually said that, look, for us, every Sri Lankan in our minds, India was the country which stood by us at that time when the rest of the world was debating or looking away or negotiating. So with each of these countries, we will have, you cannot have this many countries and have their own politics and not expect problems. Now, there is also an issue in India that every time something happens, somebody will stand up and say, see, your policy has failed, do you have a problem? So that is the time for me to keep my mouth shut and wait for the cycle to turn, and then, look very pleased with myself when things go our way. So, it's part of our debate. I know right now people are saying many things about Bangladesh, but I urge you to look at the reality of our relationship with Bangladesh. Look at the economic relationship, look at the trade relationship. We issue 1.6 million visas a year in Bangladesh, of which I think 30% is for medical purposes. So, the more we invest in our neighborhood, if today this neighborhood is, a country somewhere is producing electricity, another is buying it. One is refining petroleum, another is purchasing it. If a waterway runs from here to there, I use your port, you use my port. If, your tourists come to me and my tourists go to you, this is how you build a region. And I would say, the country which has set an example for the region is Bhutan. Because if you look at it, Bhutan started, it was actually Bhutan which had the wisdom to say, okay, let's collaborate, we will generate electricity out of Bhutan, and, you commit to buy it. So there is a lesson which all of us have to learn, and sometimes,
जी, जब मैंने पहली बार आपका इंटरव्यू किया था तो मैंने कहा हमारी पूरी बातचीत हो गई, पाकिस्तान का नाम ही नहीं लिया.
चलिए, अच्छा था ना?
नहीं, लेकिन अब मैं इसलिए ले रहा हूं क्योंकि आप जाके आए हैं और स्पेकुलेशन अगेन हमारा काम है करना कि नवाज शरीफ फिर बुलाएंगे प्राइम मिनिस्टर को.
सॉरी, स्पेकुलेशन क्या था?
नवाज शरीफ फिर बुलाएंगे प्राइम मिनिस्टर को.
मैं उनसे तो नहीं मिला था, और मैं गया था वहाँ SCO की मीटिंग के लिए, और जैसे मैंने पहले से बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से कहा था, आई एम गोइंग देयर फॉर अ SCO मीटिंग, आई एम अ गुड SCO मेंबर, I will be very supportive, and it was a Pakistani presidency of SCO, we were very supportive of it. All of us had an interest कि SCO की proceedings जो है बहुत स्मूथली चले, तो गए वहाँ, मिले सबसे, हाथ मिलाया, had a good meeting, और आ गए वापस.
चलिए ठीक है. तो इंडिया सेंचुरी के जो बड़े बड़े कंपोनेंट हैं, दुनिया के देशों के साथ रिश्ता कैसा रहेगा इस सेंचुरी को डिफाइन करने के लिए इंडिया के नज़रिए से, उसमें फिफ्थ सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट फैक्टर है हमारी इंटरनल सिचुएशन, इंटरनल डायनामिक्स, हमारे एस्पिरेशन, वो कैसे पैन आउट होंगे?
देखिए, मुझे एक्चुअली पॉलिटिकल साइंस स्टूडेंट, तो कभी कभी मैं आई लुक एट इट स्लाइटली एकेडमिकली. See, if one looks from 1950s, there were actually, you can say, many lost decades of this country. If you look, maybe 1960s and 70s, हम लोग जो हैं सोशलिज्म की दिशा में ज़्यादा गए, बहुत ज़्यादा स्टेट कंट्रोल कर लिया. We killed business entrepreneurship in this country. 80s में अगर आप देखें, instability, the lot of the opportunities. So, today we are talking manufacturing. Manufacturing globalization started in the 80s. Manufacturing globalization started in 80s and 90s. We missed the bus. In fact, 80s and all through till late 90s, because of political instability, because of, I would say, ideology, because of policies of various kinds, we actually did not do as well as we could have. We fell behind, particularly if you were to do a comparison with China at that time. So, for me, when I look ahead, I would say political stability is absolutely crucial. That just look, अब 100 दिन हुए, थोड़ा 100 से थोड़ा ज़्यादा हुआ है, maybe now 130 days, 140 days. But you look today at even in this short period, the decisions which have come out, 12 industrial zones in the country, new infrastructure projects in this country, big skilling internship issues in this country, support for our agriculture in this country. अगर मान लीजिए तीसरे कार्यकाल की सरकार नहीं होती, you could not have got after this faster.
True.
So, to me, political stability, political continuity is very crucial, number one. Number two, you need leadership. You need people who can look ahead and take big decisions confidently. If you say, if you have a leader who says, look, in this decade, chips will be very important. My country cannot be left out. Or if you say, rail is the backbone of transportation of this country, I cannot continue with a 1950s, 60s railway technology. I have to upgrade it to something else. So, if you say, an Indian citizen must find air travel affordable. It should not be a privilege of a few people in metropolitan cities.
True.
So then you have, saying double the number of airports, which is what we have done in the last decade. So I would say we need vision, we need leadership, we need political stability. We need to motivate young people, give them that kind of opportunities. And that, in a sense, today in the government, when we look, in the cabinet, when we look, in groups of ministers, that's a kind of vision and motivation with which we are working. We are not working for a 5-year term. We also in the government, in the cabinet, we have Indian century in mind. That is what is driving us today.
Right. आपने अभी विजन और लीडरशिप की बात कही और आपने ये भी कहा कि ऑफ कोर्स इंडिया अपना इंटरेस्ट पहले देखेगा, वो तो गिवन है, और फिर आपने ये भी कहा कि ग्लोबल इंटरेस्ट के लिए भी काम
गिवन नहीं है, एक समय था हम दूसरों का देखते थे.
राइट. और ग्लोबल इंटरेस्ट तो देखना ही चाहिए. मेरा एक सवाल आपसे ये है कि जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी का डिप्लोमेटिक स्किल, जो डेफ्टनेस हमने देखा है, अब ग्लोबली बहुत सारे पॉलिसी एलिट्स ये कहने लग गए हैं कि एक्चुअली मोदी लेड इंडिया के लिए एक बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है नए ग्लोबल ऑर्डर को शेप करने की. उस रोल को आप लोग कितना अंडरस्टेटेड ढंग से प्ले कर रहे हैं या कितना फ्रंट फुट पर खेलने वाले हैं?
देखिए, हम दोनों कर रहे हैं क्योंकि कभी कभी समय, अवसर, मौका ऐसा होता है, यू हैव टू बी फ्रंट फुट. जैसे हमें लगा कि ग्लोबल साउथ की आवाज़ जो है बिल्कुल दब गई है. सो लीडिंग इनटू G20, हमें लगा वी हैव टू गेट द ग्लोबल साउथ टुगेदर, वी हैव टू गेट बैक टू देयर कंसर्न्स विच हैड गॉट sidelined. That's occasion where you are, as you say, on front foot. But there are occasions where you have to be more deft. अब जैसे अब प्रधानमंत्री जी, he went to Russia, he met President Putin, then he went to Kiev. Okay. So now certain things, अब इसको आप पब्लिक में ब्रॉडकास्ट, मैं तो आपको तो नहीं बताऊंगा what is happening. So some things you have to do from little bit more discreetly, deftly. But I would say this, just look over the last 10 years. Right now, there is a war going on in Ukraine. How many countries, how many prime ministers, how many leaders have the ability to go to Moscow talk frankly, go to Kiev, talk frankly, go back to Moscow and go back to Kiev. Similarly, there's another war going on in the Middle East. Now, not many people know that even in the last year, the number of times where actually we've had conversations with Iran and conversations with Israel, that's also there.
True.
We are today in the global south seen very much, okay, people trust us to stand for their interests. But please also see, at the same time, G7 is very keen ki bhai aap aiye, please join our conference. You are a big democratic market economy and influential player. So how to in a sense make yourself relevant across multiple forums and multiple interests? I think this is something which, if you have a confident leadership and if you are performing, look, at the end of the day, why are they all doing it? Because they're also looking at your performance. When you tell people, look, I'm a 7-8% growth economy today, and if you tell politically people that I am a third-term government, believe me, there's a lot of respect for that. So it's partly respect is earned.
Right. Sir, my time is up, as producer tells me, but if you have another 5-7 minutes, we can take some questions. I will go by your...
All right, very good. Okay, fine.
Okay, quickly. Yeah, some audience questions, actually limited to 2 or 3. Mike?
Hello?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, this. Yeah.
Yes?
Go ahead. No?
Can you hear me, sir? Is it working? Yeah. Sir, hi. Today there was a threat issued on the Air India by the terrorist group and the Canadian Mr. Pannu or whatever he's called. What is our take on that, and what is the government's plan? Because we see a lot of issues with Canada, and this morning this guy has typically asked all people to refrain from flying Air India. So I see, what is your take on that, sir?
Ek saath, acha. Next question?
Yeah, here. This side, sir.
Yeah.
So good evening. We are talking a lot about technology, everything. But at the same time, there are people who are smarter than us, that is scammers, or the people who are cyber frauds. What is our take on that, and how soon are we resolving it? Because I have been hit recently with a huge amount of scam, and now I'm really feeling that cyber security is the biggest concern.
Right.
Right, so this is my question.
Okay. One more question, last.
Yeah, good evening, Jashankarji. We have family and friends living in Canada. So how all this is going to impact our families and friends living in Canada? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Let me start with that question. Look, I'm not aware of today exactly the specificities, but the broad point is, we have seen, this would not be the first time, we have seen threats to our airlines, we have seen threats to our parliament, we have seen threats to our diplomats, we have seen threats to our High Commission, to our leaders. And that is a source of concern to us, because if these threats, because they are cleverly worded, are then said, they are okay with freedom of speech, I think there are very serious issues. And the point which we make to the country concerned, let us reverse roles. Suppose you were at the receiving end of this threat. Suppose it was your airline, your leaders, your diplomats, your parliament. Would you take it as lightly as that? So, no, you don't get a second chance. I get to answer. So, look, my point is, these are exactly the kind of problems with which we started this conversation. That there are countries which feel that, your concerns don't matter, that's okay, that's part of our politics. But if the slightest thing happens to them, even if it is legitimate, they have they start jumping up and down. So as I said, when I see today you're talking of something as egregious as the threat to the airline, I'm talking of something as simple as social. I mean, if a government can list out, 20, 25 Indian journalists saying these journalists are today interfering in my country because they have made social media posts. And this is the same government which then tells you, a threat to airlines is part of freedom of speech. I think you ask yourself, whose credibility is taking a hit out here. On your question regarding, cybersecurity, absolutely. The more digital we become, the more cyber we become, it's a great enabler, it's a great efficiency. But with every change also comes the risk. Because, your data is on something. There are things you tell your phone, which you will not tell any living person. So what happens is that every part of that progress also has a parallel danger or vulnerability which comes along. So that is why today actually governments invest so much on cyber security. So you're worried about your telecom, you're worried about your apps, you tell people, on computer do this. If you look even at TV, why does, say, Reserve Bank of India or other banks put out these ads saying, please don't give your PIN number to somebody, don't do this, don't do that? Because it's in human nature to fall for some of this. So I think people need to develop that cybersecurity mindset also along with that. The third question the gentleman asked, look, I think we are having a problem with a segment of politics in Canada. I don't think, I would not take this into, about families being safe. I think, people to people relations, we would like to maintain it. I think we need to sort of narrow this down to and define this problem for what it is. So I would not be so anxious.
थैंक यू वेरी मच सर. आज सुबह प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने ये बताया कि इंडिया सेंचुरी का उनका विजन क्या है, और आपने बहुत अच्छे तरीके से बताया कि वो कैसे इम्प्लीमेंट होगा. आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. थैंक यू.
हे आहे NDTV आणि आपण पाहत आहात NDTV मराठी.